Rajagachajastotarasetta Sri Srimad His Divine Grace Shalabai Charanarvind Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki ISKCON Deviti Founder Acharyas Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada ki Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki Prem se Gaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Giridhara Sri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki Sri Sri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shamakunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhana ki Sri Vrindavan Mathura Dhama ki Sri Dwarka Dhama ki Sri Jagannath Puri Dhama ki Sri Navadvip Mayapur Dhama ki Sri Mayapur Chandra De Mandir ki Gangamai Jamunamai ki Tulsi Devi Bhakti Devi ki Harinam Sankirtan ki Samavata Bhakta Vrinda ki Transcendental Book Distribution ki Jai Shri Sri Gauranitai ki Jai Shri Sri Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Devi ki Jai Shri Krishna Balaram ki Jai Shri Govardhan ki Jai Shri Sri Radha Madhava ki Jai Nitai Gaura Premanande. All glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to Sri Guru and to Sri Gauranga, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Ajnanatirmirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Jena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namah Sri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Tadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Sri Juta Padakamalam Sri Gurun Vaishnavasya Sri Rupam Sarvajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tvam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalitam Sri Vishakam He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sutedevi Pranamami Haripriye Vanchakalpa Tirubhyasya Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Mudiraye Nasta Prayesha Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Utamashloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki Idam Bhagavatam Nama Puranam Brahma Samhita Utamashloka Charitam Chakara Bhagavan Rishi Nishreyasaya Lokasya Dhanyam Swastyayanam Maha Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Sri Vasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare
Krishna Krishna Hare Hare
Hare Rama Hare Rama
Hare Rama Hare Rama
Rama Rama Hare Hare
Rama Rama Hare Hare
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya
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 Om Shri Surabhyai Namaha
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 Mukhaṁ karoti vācanam pāṅgum langayate girim Yat-kripatamaham bande Sri Gurum Dinataranam Yat-kripatamaham bande Sri Gurum Dinataranam Hare Krishna. We are continuing from first canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Chapter number 4. Let's see here. Chapter number 4, entitled The Appearance of Sri Narada, and today it is text number
11.
11. Yes. Namanti yat-pāda-niketam ātmanaḥ śivāya hānīya dhanāni śatravaḥ katham vīraḥ śriyam aṅga dustyajāṁ yuvaiṣatotsraṣṭum aho sahāsubhiḥ namanti yat-pāda-niketam ātmanaḥ śivāya hānīya dhanāni śatravaḥ katham vīraḥ śriyam aṅga dustyajāṁ yuvaiṣatotsraṣṭum aho sahāsubhiḥ namanti yat-pāda-niketam ātmanaḥ śivāya hānīya dhanāni katham vīraḥ śriyam aṅga dustyajāṁ yuvaiṣatotsraṣṭum aho sahāsubhiḥ
namanti yat-pāda-niketam ātmanaḥ śivāya hānīya dhanāni śatravaḥ
katham vīraḥ śriyam aṅga dustyajāṁ
yuvaiṣatotsraṣṭum aho sahāsubhiḥ
yuvaiṣatotsraṣṭum aho sahāsubhiḥ
namanti yat-pāda-niketam ātmanaḥ
namanti yat-pāda-niketam ātmanaḥ
śivāya hānīya dhanāni śatravaḥ
śivāya hānīya dhanāni śatravaḥ
kathaṁ vīraḥ śriyam aṅga dustyajāṁ
kathaṁ vīraḥ śriyam aṅga dustyajāṁ
yuvaiṣatotsraṣṭum sahāsubhiḥ
yuvaiṣatotsraṣṭum sahāsubhiḥ
namanti yat-pāda-niketam
namanti yat-pāda-niketam
śivāya dhanāni śatravaḥ
śivāya hānīya dhanāni śatravaḥ
kathaṁ vīraḥ śriyam aṅga dustyajāṁ
kathaṁ vīraḥ śriyam aṅga dustyajāṁ
yuvaiṣatotsraṣṭum sahāsubhiḥ
yuvaiṣatotsraṣṭum sahāsubhiḥ namanti yat-pāda-niketam śivāya hānīya dhanāni śatravaḥ kathaṁ vīraḥ śriyam aṅga dustyajāṁ yuvaiṣatotsraṣṭum sahāsubhiḥ namanti bow down yat-pāda whose feet niketam under ātmanaḥ own śivāya welfare hānīya used to bring about dhanāni wealth śatravaḥ enemies katham for what reason saha he vīraḥ the chivalrous śriyam opulence aṅga O Sūta Gosvāmī dustyajāṁ insuperable yuvā in full youth aiṣata desired utsraṣṭum to give up aho exclamation saha with asubhiḥ life. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki. He was such a great emperor that all his enemies would come and bow down at his feet and surrender all their wealth for their own benefit. He was full of youth and strength, and he possessed kingly opulences that were difficult to give up. Why did he want to give up everything, including his life? Kindly repeat after me. He was such a great emperor.
He was such a great emperor
that all his enemies would come and bow down at his feet and surrender all their wealth for their own benefit. He was full of youth and strength. And he possessed kingly opulences. Kingly opulences that were difficult to give up. Why did he want to give up everything? Including his life. Purport. There was nothing undesirable in his life. He was quite a young man and could enjoy life with power and opulence. So there was no question of retiring from active life. There was no difficulty in collecting the state taxes because he was so powerful and chivalrous that even his enemies would come to him and bow down at his feet and surrender all wealth for their own benefit. Maharaj Parikshit was a pious king. He conquered his enemies, and therefore the kingdom was full of prosperity. There was enough milk, grains, and metals, and all the rivers and mountains were full of potency. So materially, everything was satisfactory. Therefore, there was no question of untimely giving up his kingdom and life. The sages were eager to hear all about this. Translation again. He was such a great emperor that all his enemies would come and bow down at his feet and surrender all their wealth for their own benefit. He was full of youth and strength, and he possessed kingly opulences that were difficult to give up. Why did he want to give up everything, including his life? So this is one of the questions being asked by the sages at Naimisharanya. In those days, this goes back 5,000 years ago, at that time, the Vedic culture was very prominent because there were qualified leaders, qualified kings, and there was a system of conquering kingdoms. The basis of conquering kingdoms was to establish or make sure that they would be following the codes of dharma. It was not for the purpose, as we see today, for all kinds of material goals. Generally, we have seen in the last few hundred years various nations conquering, colonizing. India was colonized, isn't it, for many years. Amazing, like for about 200 years. Indonesia was colonized for over 300 years. Such big countries colonized by some smaller country. But the purpose was not to establish God consciousness or Krishna consciousness, but was to plunder, basically. So, Vedic culture recognize those who are leaders within that kind of culture, understand that unless citizens are given an opportunity to cultivate or practice a spiritual life, then their condition will remain, we could say, not very promising, in that they will not know what the goal or the purpose of life is, and they will not be encouraged to practice Krishna consciousness. So the real purpose of those who are meant to lead in a country is that they are, as Krishna explains in the Bhagavad Gita, isn't it? Dharma samsthapanarthaya, to establish the codes or the principles of religiosity. And here in the purport, actually, it's nicely explained at the end of the purport how, because Parikshit Maharaj was such an ideal saintly king, here Srila Prabhupada mentions he was a pious king. A pious king means one who follows the codes or the laws of dharma as given. The codes or the laws of dharma are not man-made codes. They are established or given by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Dharmam tu sakshat Bhagavatam pranitam. And when a nation, when a country is fortunate to have such kind of leader, then as it is described here, not only are citizens given an opportunity to practice Krishna consciousness and in this way become, we could say, opulent, that is defined by sages or by our acharyas. Real opulence for an individual is being situated in proper Krishna conscious knowledge. But not only was there opulence in that respect or on that level, but also there was material opulence. Material opulence is described here actually in terms of having enough milk, having enough grains, metals, and the rivers and mountains were full of potency. This is the natural opulence that comes when there are saintly kings who are governing. And of course, we all know how these opulences that are listed here are no longer available, no longer exist in modern day society. Whatever rivers may remain, because many rivers, as we know, have dried up, are no longer existing, and whatever rivers may be there are extremely polluted, as well as the oceans. So it means that actually when one becomes pious, when one becomes religious, when one follows the codes given by the Lord and repeated and propagated by the Lord's representatives, the saintly persons, then this benefits people in all respects. Now, everyone, most countries around the world are eager to develop economically, but unfortunately, they are not doing that based on the codes or the principles of religiosity. So those codes, the codes of religiosity, they're like laws, isn't it? If we follow the law of the land, then we will be protected. We will not get into any difficulty with the authorities. But if we go against the established laws, then all kinds of problems will actually come. So dharma actually in many ways means laws, the established laws. And Srila Prabhupada, when he went to the West, he introduced these laws, laws of mankind. They're given in our Shastra, and including Srimad Bhagavatam. For example, the what is called pillars of dharma, the 4 pillars of dharma, they're part of the law established by the Lord, beginning with satyam, truthfulness, daya, compassion, tapa means austerity or discipline, and then saucham, cleanliness. These are the first of the 4 qualities mentioned by Narada Muni, and these are the first that Srila Prabhupada introduced actually in the West, isn't it? Because these 4 qualities, these 4 principles help one to actually become situated in the mode of goodness. And therefore there are specific activities which are not at all conducive for developing these qualities. And therefore Srila Prabhupada spoke about the 4 rules and regulations. So we follow these 4 rules and regulations, beginning with satyam, truthfulness. So it is said that actually in the different ages, these, like in Satya Yuga, all of these qualities were present because everyone followed these 4 principles. These 4 principles, as we know, of no gambling, no meat eating, no intoxication, and no illicit sex life, they are directly connected with these qualities. If one cannot follow these principles, then one cannot develop these 4 qualities. And if one is not able to develop these 4 qualities, then one cannot become situated in the mode of goodness. And if one is not situated in the mode of goodness, it is very, very difficult, practically impossible to understand and follow these codes of dharma. It is impossible to actually understand the higher, we could say the higher principles of religiosity. And as we've heard so many times explained by Srila Prabhupada, this is actually the beginning of human life. We see how in Vedic culture everything is nicely arranged, nicely regulated. That's why Srila Prabhupada would often stress on the importance of being very clean in what we do. This he mentioned, of course, in the context of deity worship. Those who are pujaris, those who are connected with deity worship in our temples, they must have these 2 very important qualities of cleanliness and Prabhupada called it punctuality. Punctuality is directly connected with discipline, isn't it? that things need to begin at the proper time. And these two qualities, which are found in these first 4 of the 30 qualities that one is meant to develop in this human form of life, 2 qualities of satyam, truthfulness, and socham, cleanliness, they must be there actually in all the members of the system of varna and asrama, including Shudra, Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Shudras, all those who claim to be members of civilized human beings. They need to follow a minimum these 2 qualities. No one likes to deal with people who are dishonest, isn't it? We like to work in a situation or with people who are honest. Similarly, we like when we walk somewhere to see that a place is neat and clean, isn't it? These will be reflected in our consciousness if we make an effort to keep our place of residence neat and clean. Then we will more easily be able to develop a purified consciousness. In other words, the external, how we live externally, has effect on the internal. And vice versa as well. If we are very advanced internally, if our consciousness is purified, then we will automatically also want to create a situation that will also be purified. So these are important lessons being given here in terms of material opulence. Material opulence will more easily be manifest, although devotee is not after material opulence, but that material opulence will automatically be present when one is following the codes of dharma, as explained here in the purport. And of course, as often mentioned by Srila Prabhupada, the understanding or the kind of opulence that is there in the Vedic culture is different from what people consider as opulence in modern day society. The natural opulence that comes in terms of having sufficient food grains, in terms of having, for example, many animals, especially cows, help individuals and help society ultimately in practicing their Krishna consciousness. So only someone who was very elevated spiritually, like Parikshit Maharaj, who was surrounded and living with this kind of material opulence and who had all kinds of material facilities, only one who is very elevated spiritually can give that up, as he did, actually. So in this way, the sages were curious to know the more details about Parikshit Maharaj's decision to leave the kingdom, to go to the bank of the Ganges, and to prepare himself to actually leave his body. So any...
The people, devotees, those who are sitting there, they were not knowing that he has been cursed by Sringi. That is, they were asking why he want to give up everything and
No, they were not. That was in a different place. Communication was not as it is today. Somebody does something, the whole world knows about it within 30 seconds or whatever. So they were asking this question because they were possibly some new, but generally it took some time for news to travel to different places. The explanation is given how Sūta Gosvāmī was actually initially sitting. He was one of those sages, isn't it, in Naimisharanya, and they were trying to begin. They were just at the stage of starting a 1,000-year yajna, isn't it? That's described in the Bhagavatam. But they were having a hard time lighting the fire. So anyways, he left that place, Sūta Gosvāmī, and then somehow traveled to Hastinapur, or New Delhi, and that's where he got opportunity. So then after he came back. So in other words, those who remained there, they were not knowing all the details of what was happening.
You had mentioned that Parikshit Maharaj was pious and he was following all the rules and regulations which are given by the Lord. That is dharma.
Yes.
So here also in the Kali Yuga, now also we have a good sampradayas and Vaishnavas, also exalted Vaishnavas. They are following dharma, and a lot of devotees also following all the dharma. But we can see there's no grain proper, no we are finding very difficulty in the grain, any proper food, and
Yes.
very difficult to make a good communities. What is the lacking in that?
Right. So the question is that we have many great acharyas have appeared, and so many devotees are following dharma. Why is it that we don't have what is being described here? Like Parikshit Maharaj was a pious king, and because of his piety, all of these things were present. It is true that we have, we've been blessed, although it is Kali Yuga, with very exalted personalities. They are part of our Guru Parampara. They have been very powerful in their preaching, introducing the principles of dharma, and our most illustrious of all recent acharyas, of course, is our founder, Acharya Srila Prabhupada, and he has also, by his preaching, attracted so many individuals who are practicing Krishna consciousness. Why is it that there is still this lacking of as you mentioned, what is referred to here, like grains, favorable situation? We can understand that actually, because there's a very large number of people who are doing the opposite, who are practicing adharma. So there's a very large number of people, and because we are in the days of what is called democracy, so they elect representatives who are also not knowledgeable, not familiar with these codes or principles of dharma. And therefore, that is one reason why Srila Prabhupada, in so many of his lectures or conversations, would point this out, that unless we have leaders in society, leaders means those, in this context, those who are governing different countries, unless they are God conscious, unless they know these principles of dharma, then we will continue to have the kind of situation where even basic necessities of life are not there. So we know from the Bhagavad Gita how there is this constant struggle between the divine, those who are of divine nature, means the devotees of the Lord, and those who are of demoniac nature, the asuras, the non-devotees. Kali Yuga is especially that period where, there is a larger number of non-devotees, and therefore their influence is very great. However, those who are devotees, especially in the context of what is very unique and special for this Kali Yuga, is that the advent of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and the mission that he has introduced, the Harinam Sankirtan, is meant to actually bring about a change of consciousness in the impious lives of people, and this is ongoing, so to speak. And one day, as nicely predicted by Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, we will begin to understand that major changes are taking place when a high court judge will be wearing tilak, and where prime ministers and presidents of different countries will be wearing tilak. Then the devotees will be rejoicing. When this will happen from the government side, they will sponsor and encourage the Harinam Sankirtan. They will organize big festivals and yagyas. Those days have not yet come. But there are more and more individuals in different leadership positions in society. I remember when I was in Mayapur, for example, a number of, even though at that time the government of West Bengal was under, and for many years, communism. But Bengal is such a place that even though many, we could say, ministers were part of the Communist Party, they would come to Sridham Mayapur, give lectures and quote right and left from Bhagavad Gita. Like a little difficult to, they kind of separated politics and religion, Of course, in the Vedic culture, those who are politicians are, now we live in what is called a secular state, where they don't want to promote religion, in most governments in the world. However, we learn from Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam that one should promote, one should understand, and rule based on not one particular religion, but on the principles of religiosity. Srila Prabhupada also explained, it is not proper, it is not good that one promote one particular religion over another, because then you get into conflict. But what is lacking today is a basic understanding of the principles of dharma, and that is why Srila Prabhupada was so effective and successful in introducing Vedic culture, because more than anyone, he clearly understood that difference. Srila Prabhupada was not promoting this religion or that religion, including Hinduism. Prabhupada would often say, we're not Hindus, because the word Hindu actually is not even in Shastra, isn't it? what is in Shastra is Sanatan Dharma. So often Srila Prabhupada would say, we are Sanatanists. We follow Sanatan Dharma. And he would explain how actual religion, actual Dharma is Sanatan Dharma in both the features of Bhagavad Dharma and Varnasrama Dharma. We are also meant to follow Varnasrama Dharma. That is an eternal religion or an eternal activity, actually, for especially the conditioned souls. So we should know that the more we spread the message of Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, every single day, actually, more and more people, especially this month of book distribution, the month of Sankirtan Marathon is especially auspicious in that so many new people are receiving Srila Prabhupada's books, and many of them for the first time coming in contact with this philosophy. So gradually, in higher positions of leadership within society, more and more people are coming in contact with devotees, coming in contact with the teachings of the Bhagavad Gita. And so, in other words, it's ongoing, and that day will come. That is our conviction, because that is the prediction of our acharyas, that is written in the Shastra, that although we are living in Kali Yuga, there is this 10,000-year period, whereby the era of Satya Yuga, the golden age. Lord Chaitanya, who is known as the golden avatar, is actually introducing this golden age where we will have, we should be convinced of this, we will have in due course of time leaders in society who will be having tilak and preaching about Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. And when that happens, then we will have so much of grains, so much of milk, cows will be protected, and there will be natural opulence all over the world. And devotees can begin to do that even now by, as many, many times stated by Srila Prabhupada, by understanding the importance of growing our own food, by beginning this practice of growing our own food, whenever possible, keeping our own cows so we can have fresh milk, so we can, in this way, also protect cows. One last question here. Is it possible that people take to Krishna consciousness only when they are materially distressed or unhappy, and are complacent when they are comfortably placed in life? It is not always the case that people only take to Krishna consciousness when they are totally exhausted, but that helps. That does help in many cases, and in many cases actually that is required. It is necessary. But if someone is fortunate to come in contact with this philosophy, if one is fortunate to get the good association of devotees, then one may already be brightly situated. One may, in terms of being, let's say, pious, and one may also have various kinds of material facilities, but by this contact with devotees. So in other words, although in the Bhagavad Gita it does mention that generally those who are impoverished, those who are inquisitive like this, they naturally take to Krishna consciousness. But it is not absolutely necessary that we, or rather it is not only those who are totally exhausted materially. There is a tendency, as the question is phrased here, when one is materially comfortably situated, that also Srila Prabhupada explains, generally speaking, a little bit more difficult. If people, if their material needs are met, if they have all kinds of material facilities and opulence, generally, and also if they are very intelligent, generally they will disregard or be less attracted. A lot depends on their previous karma, their previous activities, and a lot depends on the kind of association they get. If they are fortunate to come in contact with this knowledge, then they may also take to Krishna consciousness. Yes? Thank you very much. Jai Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki Jai, Sri Prabhupada ki Jai.
His Holiness Bhakti Rao Swami Maharaj ki Jai.